So today we are going to take a look at the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. This is a spirituality book. It has a fair degree of popularity, and the central way that the author kind of processes the world is that we make agreements, and when we make an agreement, we agree that reality is a particular way. And so, um, what he encourages people to do is to, in particular, examine the agreements that they make, and so how you interpret reality, and he talks about four agreements that are particularly important, but it's really more of a way of making agreements. And so the four agreements are, the first one is be impeccable with your word, and this isn't merely just be an honest type of thing, but it is a be precise and selective with your word and highly intentional with your word. So what he means is when you agree that the world is a particular way, when you make an agreement, you be careful with the way that you are agreeing that the world is. So, for example, if someone um, says you're stupid to you, you shouldn't just agree with their perspective and let it enter your worldview. There should be some analysis. You should be impeccable with the selections of the words you use to describe yourself, type of thing. It's similar to like the Buddhist paradigm of responding rather than reacting, right? So the way you conceive of yourself and the world and yourself in the world, you should be intentional with, is what he means by be impeccable with your word, not just a be honest type of thing. The second agreement is, I think it's don't take anything personal. Um, and the idea behind that one is that what you want, the way he frames it is a lot of people are going to treat you particular ways, and you shouldn't view any of that as especially a reflection of you, or if you are, you should. If someone says something negative about you, what you should do is you should actually consider if it's true, and then think about it, and then decide if you want to accept it. So you notice the first agreement and the second agreement are kind of in tandem there, in that you shouldn't uncritically accept any type of feedback on yourself, and you should look at the way other people treat you less of a reflection of who you are and more of a reflection of how they are. And so that is not taking anything personally. The third is don't make assumptions. And so this one is it's similar to it's similar to psychology in terms of not engaging in cognitive distortions. Like if someone flakes on you, for example, a lot of the book incorporates examples that have to do with relationships. But if someone flakes on you, for example, uh, if you assume that it's because they don't like you or something, rather than it's possibly there could be any number of reasons, you're making an assumption. And so, if you're being intentional about the way you interpret your reality, what you should do is you should be able to suspend judgment, especially with things that are with interpretations or agreements that are particularly toxic or negative. You should let there be space in between when you are given feedback and when you are drawing conclusions. And so you shouldn't jump to conclusions, so you shouldn't make assumptions, that type of thing. And the fourth agreement is you always do your best. It might be phrased slightly differently. No, it's always do your best. Um, and so this agreement is uh, so partially it is an injunction to try hard and do your best type of thing, but more so it seems an injunction to, if you've done your best, to be satisfied with having done your best. And so there's this. A lot of the book is kind of avoiding beating yourself up in some sense, But if you've done the best you possibly can do, you should be satisfied with having done that. And it's kind of similar to a stoic position where you are focusing on what you can control, and if it's something outside your control, or you did your best with the things inside your control, then you should be satisfied, even if the consequences of your actions are something that are negative to you. Because in the end, all you can do is control what you can control, and if you're doing your best, then you know that's that's pretty good. So this agreements centric or interpretation of like a spirituality type of tradition is somewhat interesting. I think that drawing attention to how you are conceiving of reality in the way of saying you are agreeing to this reality is interesting because it causes you to take responsibility for your interpretation, which is a little bit different than some other spirituality books that just are perhaps a little esoteric and don't talk as much about your own complicit relationship in that in your own interpretation of reality. Instead, they change your perspective and make you realize that things are different, but perhaps less that you are constantly engaging in your own perspective building. Um, as far as spirituality books go, it's a little less abstract and a little more practical, I would guess. And so it wasn't exactly my favorite type of spirituality book, but I think it was. I think it's fairly practical, easy to read, and so for that reason, let's get into the ratings. Utility, I gave it a 7.5. It's very short. It's very easy to read, and so in terms of the time it takes to read, it's almost nothing. I think it's got a fair bit of usefulness. Uh, as far as it's pretty utility dense as far as spirituality goes. So if you are in particular in the market for a spirituality book, this one seems reasonable. And I think that the evaluating which ones are good is a little bit different than evaluating other books. But so for entertainment, I gave it a 5. Nothing stood out as especially entertaining to me. Um, Maybe I should have scored it a little bit higher because it's got a little more readability in terms of real world examples, I think, than the average spirituality book. But okay. Interest, I gave it a 5. Pretty even there. It wasn't not interesting. It wasn't. As far as spirituality books go, it didn't really blow my mind. There weren't uh, this agreements as a vehicle for uh, in thinking of your interpretation of reality is somewhat interesting, but it's just there. Novelty, I gave it 4.5. I think a lot of the ideas that are present in this book are fairly common in the spirituality streets, I guess. And so, while I think consuming some amount of spirituality literature or stuff on meditation or that type of stuff, while I think that that's important to do, I don't think that missing out on this book specifically is a huge loss. Although it's immensely popular amongst some for some people, so or amongst some circles. So maybe it's just wasn't quite for me, and it's actually pretty good. Um, for style, I gave it a 5.5. Uh, Reading through it was pretty easy. Readability, I gave it a 6. Um, Same thing. Difficulty, 7. Easy book, short. The pages have a ton of text on them. Or, I mean, not very much text on them per page, so it's like, can you see? Maybe not. But it's extremely short. It's like 120 pages, but the pages are super small, so it's not a challenging book. Um, I think, as far as recommendations go, I don't think I would recommend this book particularly high, unless someone said something specific that made me think that this was better than a different book. Like for a more laid back and less theoretical, more I guess, readable spirituality book, I'd probably recommend The Alchemist, and then I really like Tolle's stuff, Eckhart Tolle's stuff, um, and then I like some of David Data's stuff, although I disagree with a lot of stuff of his, so that's kind of a mixed bag. So as far as spirituality books go, I don't think this is pretty high on my recommends list. Although I don't think it's a bad book. So it's not that I wouldn't it's not that I would, if someone said they were going to read it, I'd be like, oh, okay, let me know how you like it. I wouldn't say, oh, you should avoid that book. But I don't think I would go out and recommend it very often. Um, if you like this book or if you like this review, feel free to give a like or subscribe. If, as far as comments go, if you really like this book and you read other spirituality books, but this book to you stands out as being particularly good, I would love to know why. I know some people really, really love this book, and I just couldn't put my finger on exactly why I think some people love this book. And I'd be very curious to know in the comments. So perhaps you could help me out with that. Anyways, hope you have a good one.